How you going, guys? Welcome to the first in a series of exciting new videos where I will be doing a review of Ratcon, the Warhammer 40k event in Ballarat Victoria. In this series I will be reviewing the mission pack, the player pack, the event on the day, my own personal list and what my plans and strategies are, as well as the list of whoever happens to win the event. This will be an all-encompassing showcase of what Ratcon is and what some of the events in Melbourne, Victoria and the surrounding towns do. Ballarat being only a 2-hour drive from Melbourne, so it's pretty close for those of you who want to attend. So I'll be doing a full summary, full breakdown of it, and I'm excited and I look forward to sharing it with you. Alright, so in this video I'll be going through the player pack, which is going to outline all of the basic bits and pieces about the event. It's not going to contain the missions, but it will contain the way that scoring is done, the battle scoring, the way paint scoring is done for the event, the general structure of the event, and all of those sorts of things. And basically the way that I'm going to do this is I'm effectively going to read through the player pack. Not every word, I'll just sort of skim through and pull out the interesting parts for those of you who are interested but don't have the time or attention span to actually read the whole fucking thing. So you can just listen along, and all of the important stuff I'll point out to you, and I'll also have a screen grab of the video to the side here, which you can follow along, and if there's anything that I miss, you'll be able to pause it and read it and all that sort of bullshit. So that's the plan. Let's get stuck straight into it. Alrighty, I've got the laptop in front of me, I've got the player pack up. Let's have a quick look-see, shall we? So looking at the front page, we've got a standard introductory thing and a schedule. So it's a 2-day event. We've got 3-hour rounds by the looks of it. Day 1 we've got 3 games, day 2 we've got 2, so 5 rounds all up. We've got second page, you've got ITC links, you've got information on how to sign up on Down Under Pairings, and a link to their Facebook page, as well as a nifty little map showing us where the venue is. Pretty standard player pack stuff so far. Alright, we've got BYO alcohol. Already a massive tick from me. One of my favourite things at an event is BYO alcohol. I think all events should have access to some kind of alcohol. It's a social lubricant, and 40k players are awkward pricks. So having that social lubricant is fantastic. And it also allows for people to have a little bit more fun after their games if they want to. And if you happen to be losing and you're having a shit time, it also helps take the sting off. So, big fan of alcohol at events. In my experience, I've never seen somebody take it too far. Actually, maybe once, but you know, nothing too bad. Most people are pretty well controlled with it, so I don't think alcohol at an event is ever really a bad thing. It's only really ever a good thing. And I have a preference for BYO because it's a shit ton cheaper. If you have a licensed venue, it's cool being able to go up to the bar and order a drink, but it does get quite expensive very fast. Whereas BYO, you can just bring in your own slab, put it in an esky, chuck it under the table, like Bob's your uncle. So big fan of that. Then we've got army lists, information about when army lists are due, saying that it's 2,000 points. If you're late, you get a battle point penalty, which is pretty standard sort of stuff. Payment details, information about refunds, which particularly in a time like now when COVID is still a looming threat, it's good to have that information. And then the payment details, the bank account, whatnot, pretty standard. Now we have army selection and battle score. So here we start getting into the points breakdown and how the scoring of the event is going to work. This is the real sort of meat of the player pack, and one of the things that separates Ratcon from a lot of other standard sort of events. So they're saying that army selection and battle score is going to be worth a total of 5,500 points. So basically what it looks like is you get 2,000 point army, no more than 3 detachments, no legends, and each battle will be scored out of 100 as per the standard mission pack. So for a maximum of 500 points. And then in addition to that, they're awarding 1,000 points for a win, 500 points for a draw, and 0 points for a loss. So it's using a combination of the battle points that you get standard as well as round points, which basically means that if you have 5 small wins, you're not going to get overtaken by somebody who has 4 massive wins and a loss. So I really like that. I think that's a really, really good feature to have. Because there's nothing more heartbreaking than when you go undefeated, but somebody else walks up and takes that first place trophy, and you're like, "What the fuck? I just crushed. I beat that guy." You know, like. So I think that's a nice touch. I do rate that. Now we get into the presentation score. So this is something that a lot of international players might not be familiar with. Us in Melbourne in particular, we're very used to this, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your preference. But a lot of our tournaments have what we call soft scores, which are things like presentation and sportsmanship, where you get awarded points depending on how well your army is presented, and then those points go combine with your results from your games to give you an overall score, which is used to determine rankings. So basically, this way it rewards those who engage in all aspects of the game. So if you're just a pure hobbyist, you won't get an amazing score, and if you're just a pure like ITC battler, you won't get an amazing score. But if you manage to do both pretty well, then it sort of rewards people that do both. So some people don't like it because it encourages a lot of pay to win, because people will just commission paint, get some brilliant artist to commission paint their army and buy the points. That's my personal concern with it, and I've seen that happen before. And the other one is that like some people, they just don't like painting. They're not good at it. They struggle with it. They don't want to pay someone else to paint it, and they feel that having a presentation score effectively prices them out of being able to win the event, because they know their army's trash and they're just not going to win because their army's not painted as well as everybody else's, which is a real like kick in the nuts for people who aren't very good at the hobby. So it's sort of trying to take a hardcore tournament and soften it, and I think those two things are somewhat incompatible, but a lot of people do love it as well. So there's room for it in the meta. There's room for it in the meta of tournaments, the way it all works. But personally, it's not my favorite thing. I prefer having like a separate award for presentation and have it not contribute to your overall score. But anyway, enough ranting about that. Let's talk about how it works. So basically, presentation score is out of 1,650 points. So we've just said that it's 5,500 points for your battle score, and then 1,650 points for your presentation. So it's a decent chunk. If each game is worth up to 1,100, your presentation score is worth more than a crushing victory. So it's actually quite heavily weighted. I've spoke to Michael Hamilton, the TO, and he said that most players, if you're bringing a standard sort of base army, you'll look to get around 1,000 points. So, 800 to 1,000 points is the sort of standard ballpark. And then basically the people who have particularly poorly painted armies will get closer to 500, 600, and the people who have exceptionally painted armies will get closer to the 12 to 13 to 1,400 presentation points. So that's basically, that's the way that's going to work. So you've got unpainted models. If you wish to run unpainted models, you can. However, you lose your 10 points for your battle ready army. And the TOs will be monitoring that. So I believe they're going to have a panel of paint judges who will go around and judge everybody's armies. And then basically in the player pack, as you'll be seeing on the screen now, is we have a paint requirement. So there's a little chart here that shows you basically what their judging criteria are, and then what the scores will be. So you can see it's got all models painted to a minimum battle ready standard in appropriate areas for the context of the model. So this is a yes or a no, and you get 15 points for it. And up the top there it says that all of these points are times by 10 to give you this 1,650 potential points. So basically, if everything's painted, you'll get 150 points straight out of the game. And then it goes down to saying, like, are they painted above the criteria? Is further progression of colours used to a clean standard? This one is tiered, so you've got like a good, better, and best for a total of 45 or 450 points. Are all models based to a minimum standard of sand, flocked, textured, and whatever. So basically, it's talking about, is your army fully painted? How well is it painted? Is it fully based, and how well is it based? Some people do real basic stuff, some people go nuts. And basically, the more full-on your basing is, the more points you'll get there. The army has a full and coherent theme, i.e. if your army has multiple detachments or sub-faction, they are easily identifiable from one another. So this one's just a yes, no. You get 15 points if you're all cohesive and identifiable. If you don't, you don't. It's pretty good. Player has gone above and beyond with their army detail, including but not limited to a minimum of one character or unit with notable conversion or a tournament legal kit bash. Additional detail and livery, faction or organizational markings, well executed and appropriate sculpted battle damage. So this one I find really interesting, and I think this is a flaw in the player pack, where they've got, it's a yes or a no. You either get the full points or you don't. Or at least that's how I'm interpreting this table. And if you do, you get 25 or 250 points. And if you don't, you don't. But interestingly, it says that they've gone above and beyond, including but not limited to a minimum of one character with conversions. So if you've got one character that's converted but the rest of your army is garbage, do you meet this criteria? And do you get those 250 points? I think this would have been better off being a good, better, best sort of scale in the same way that they've done the painting and the basing, just to give them a little bit more freedom to sort of play with those and reward people depending. And they might do that on the day, but based on the way I'm seeing this, because it's got execution of quality, please circle one, and this in the chart for here it says not available. So they're not asking for execution quality, they're just asking, is it there? So that's interesting. We'll see how that goes. The next criteria is player has an example of advanced painting technique used uniformly within the army, i.e. all plasma weapons have OSL glow, smooth cloth blending, freehand such as squad markings or cloak insignia, and weathering. Again, this one's not a scale, it's just yes or no, do you have it or not, and it's worth 20 or 200 points. Again, I feel that should have been a scale, simply because some people will have freehand on every single model and it looks fucking insane. Other people will have one plasma pistol in the whole army and it has OSL on it. So do they get the criteria for having that? It's a bit rough. So hopefully they realise that and on the day they do it appropriately, but we'll see. Next, do you have a display board matching their army's theme and basing? This one's a yes or a no, and it's only worth 5 points or 50 points. I think that's fair, that being a yes or a no, although ideally I would like to see that scale as well, because some people bring really basic display boards, or some people bring extremely elaborate display boards. I'm bringing an extremely elaborate display board, which I'll show you guys in one of the later videos when I'm reviewing my army. And it's a bit disappointing to me that somebody who's got a Macca's tray and put some sand on it and gone, cool, that's my display board, they'll probably be eligible for those 5 points because they have one. But it's not really a display board, so it'll be interesting to see how they do that. And also, I think being only worth 5 points is a bit rough when some of the other things are worth, 25 or 30 points. And it's surely bringing a display board, which is a completely unnecessary but fucking badass, cool way of displaying your army and really engaging in that extra level of hobby that's not necessary but awesome. Your basing is necessary, you have to do it. You don't have to build a kick-ass display board. So if you do go that extra mile, I feel like if the whole idea of having a paint score is rewarding people for going that extra mile, then this really should be dialed up. That should be worth at least 15, not 5. Anyway, that's just my feedback on that one. And the last one is additional points at TO's discretion for those that have gone above and beyond in the overall presentation of their army. Now this is 0 to 10, and this is really good. I think this is really smart because it allows them to pick up on anything that they haven't outlined above. Somebody might come in and they might have LEDs in all of their shit. And there's no criteria there for that, but that's super cool if somebody's able to flick a switch and their whole army lights up. So I really like that little bit there. I feel like they've limited themselves a little bit by having that on a 0 to 10. I feel like they probably could have taken 5 to 10 points off of every single one of these criteria, and then given the TO discretion a lot more room to play. So that's some feedback for the TOs if they happen to be watching this, which I know they will be. But overall, pretty solid painting rubric, and it's got a lot of information in there. So a player that was to attend this event, they could look at this painting rubric and they could go, okay, if I want to maximize my points, this is what I need to do. They might look at it and go, you know what, fuck the display board. I'm not wasting time building a display board that's really fancy when it's only worth 5 points. I'm going to take that time and I'm going to go in and I'm just going to make sure that every single model has a cool kit bash or conversion on it. You know, maybe I'll take the time to pop all the heads off my guys, get some heads from a third-party guy or something, and make sure they've all got cool heads. And now I can say that every model in the army has some kind of conversion or kit bash, and then you can get those 25 points. And the time that it would take you to do that is probably going to be quicker than it would take you to build your own cool display board. So if somebody wanted to try to use this system to try and maximize their points for the tournament, which is what a lot of players do, there's a lot of information in here, and it's done very well in the way that you can clearly see where those points are going to be coming from, which is, I believe, the idea of the sort of putting it in the player pack so that players know how that works. Next page, they've got some examples of paint. I'm not sure if that's one of theirs, one of the TO's models, perhaps, or one they've just ripped from offline. Looks like they've ripped it from offline, and I'm saying that because the font that they've used down here for describing the quality is different to the font in the player pack, which tells me they've probably just screen grabbed that or stolen it from somebody else's player pack, which is fine. It's got examples of advanced basing, it's got examples of highlights and whatnot. Now we go into sportsmanship, which is another thing that's relatively unique to Melbourne, I think. Like it's a uniquely unpopular thing, but a lot of tournaments do it in a way of like a gesture showing that sportsmanship is really important at this event and that it will be taken very seriously. A lot of the really hardcore ITC majors and stuff like that, there's the sportsmanship issue comes up a lot. So I hear, particularly in some of the other countries. So in Australia, what we've essentially done is various tournaments will have a sportsmanship score where you get awarded points based on your conduct. So this way, not only are we rewarding people who are really good at playing the game, but also people who are really good at painting the models, and then also people who are really good at just the social interaction and not being a dick. A lot of tournaments do this various different ways. At Ratcon, they've decided to start every player with 1,000 points. So everybody has 1,000 points, and then basically, if you're playing a game and somebody's being a dick, you can go to the TO and say, look, he's being a dick, and then explain to the TO what's happening, and if the TO decides they think it's worth it, they'll issue a strike, and your first strike, you'll get 200 points subtracted from that 1,000. So that takes off your total overall score for the event. Your second strike is worth 500 points, so you're now down 700. And then your third strike is 1,000. And yeah, I think it's just so 3 strikes. And on your third strike, you may also be disqualified from the event. So it's pretty harsh, but it serves a good purpose. So things that people often will see with sportsmanship are things like slow playing. Like if you feel you got slow played out of a win or something like that, you can get the TO and be like, look man, you know, my army has 10 models, his army has 10,000, and we ended on turn 2 and this is bullshit. The TO might, you know, hit him for some points. So knowing that that's in the player pack before you sign up for the event, you know that that sort of sportsmanship score exists. You know that you won't be able to do those sorts of things. You know that if you try to do anything sneaky or try to bully your opponent in any way, you know that it's just going to cost you battle points. You know, and it could potentially cost you the event. And all you need is 3 strikes. The thing that I don't like about sportsmanship scoring is it creates this thing called sportsmanship sniping. And this is a really ugly part of Warhammer tournaments that only exists in tournaments that have a sportsmanship score. So ironically, putting the sportsmanship score into the event actually breeds a culture of worse sportsmanship, because what happens is, just say I play a perfectly fair game, but I beat my opponent, right? I beat them into the ground. I do it politely, but I destroy them, and therefore destroy their chances of winning the event. and they're salty, right? They could very well just be like, I'm going to sports hit him and attack you and take your points away from you so that you can't then go on and win either. People can bring up historical things, like you might have had a really bad game with someone 2 or 3 events ago, and then you get paired into them on this one, and you just know they're going to seek vengeance. And as soon as you get one thing even slightly wrong, like you get a rule wrong, which we all do, every frickin' tournament will get at least one rule wrong, they'll call it to you and be like, he intentionally did that, and blah, 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 and it just gets really ugly when you give a player the ability to take away your points for something as subjective as sportsmanship, you know? Like, I swear a lot in my games, and I laugh a lot in my games. Like, I'll roll fucking snake eyes for a charge, and a lot of people get angry, whereas I just laugh my ass off, and I'm like, wow, what a fucking idiot, you know? And sometimes that jovialness and that high energy can really get people off guard, because I'll also laugh at them when they fail a charge, right? So, and I'm not laughing at them, I'm laughing at the situation, the circumstances, but I mean, there have been times in the past where people have hit me for sportsmanship points because they felt I was laughing at them, you know? And it's like, I don't like that exists, the ability for your opponent to take something subjective. Like, the vast majority of my opponents laugh with me, you know? So, having your victory points at the mercy of your opponent's discretion, I think is a problem. So, at my events, I never put sportsmanship score in there. I do a similar 3-strike method, and it sort of works the same in the way that if a player comes up to me and says, this guy's being a bully, as a TO, I have the discretion to dock him points, you know? So it can still happen. I just think putting it in the player pack puts it at the forefront of people's minds and lets them know that if they want to, if they get particularly salty or upset, which a lot of 40k players get salty and upset about just stupid shit, they can attack your score, which I think is inappropriate, but it's in there. Next, we've got a list of what to bring and some information on the prizes. So with the prizes, they've got a first place overall, which is Paint Battle Sports, second place overall, third place overall. So that's the combination of all of those scores that we talked about. 5,500 from your battle, the 1,650 from your paint, and then the 1,000 points from your sportsmanship. So interestingly, you got 2,650 points are soft scores, and 5,500 are battle points. So it's actually, yeah, it's interesting. It's two-thirds battle, 1/3 sort of is soft score. So it is really important to make sure you are paying attention to those soft scores and trying to maximize them where you can. I won't place very highly at this event because my army is pretty poorly painted, but I'm mainly just going down there for the beers and to hang out with the boys and do some podcasting and share it with you guys. So I'm not overly concerned about my placing overall, but yeah, if I was trying really hard, I would be sitting here right now instead of recording this. I would be making sure my minis are painted perfectly. I'd be making sure that there's conversions everywhere. I'd be making sure that the bases match the display board and all that sort of stuff. Just so that you can get those first, second, and third. Because then the next one is Best General, which is just battle points. So whoever's the best battle points overall gets Best General. So interestingly, there's no second or third general. So if you come second on battle points, but have a trash painted army, and you might come 4th overall, you actually get nothing. So even though you were placed second on battle points. So that's something that in my events I invert. I do a first, second, third battle, and then a first, second, third painted, and then a best overall. And that way you sort of get a lot of recognition and a lot of representation. So, but either way, it's their best sports. So most people will probably end the event with 1,000 points because most people aren't dicks and won't get hit. So then there'll be like a vote where basically you take the 5 people that you versed and you pick your favourite 3, and anyone who gets the most picks, they get. Then you've got best painted first and second, which is purely off paint. and then player's choice first and second. So player's choice is at a lunch break, whatever, they'll activate voting, and you can go around and look at everybody's armies and vote for whose army you think is the best painted. So interestingly, that means that of the awards, first place overall, second place overall, third place overall, best painted, second best painted, player's choice, and second player's choice. So 7 out of the 9 awards have paint score in them. So it's very much a paint-heavy themed event. They really want to see beautifully painted armies on the tables. And unfortunately, I think that will limit the enjoyment that some people will have of it, because they will feel from the get-go like they can't win, because they will feel like that, well, my army's not painted well enough. It'll have a similar impact to if you're going into a pure battle and you lose your first game. You know, that's what it's going to feel like for some people, because they're going to feel like, oh, so for the rest of the event, no matter how well I do, I can't even break the top 3. You know, but each to their own. And I am attending the event, and I still think it's going to be a fantastic event. It's just personally, it's not something that I support that direction. Then they've got a thing where basically they say that each player will only get 1 award. They'll get a trophy and a gift voucher. Gift voucher will depend on the overall attendance. That's pretty standard. Best General is a carryover award from 2020, which we will no longer be supporting and will only receive a trophy. Okay, so from 2020, unfortunately due to coronavirus, they had an event slated to run at 2020 and it didn't run. And as a result, they've probably just brought that trophy across. And it looks like they won't be doing Best General in future, which is interesting. Mentions that commission painted armies will not be eligible for Best Painted awards. However, they can win Player's Choice voting. So that's interesting. That basically means you can't just buy a beautiful army and just win trophies. Even though you'll probably just get Player's Choice anyway, so it's fine. In order to be eligible to receive an award, your army must be painted to a battle-ready standard. Okay, so interesting. So if you have an army that's not painted at all, or not painted to a battle-ready standard, and you get Best General, it sounds like they're going to hand that down to the next person because you weren't battle-ready. Which is interesting, because the whole idea of Best General is that it should be just about generalship. So I don't know how they're going to manage that, but I imagine almost everybody will be battle ready anyway, because you still lose the 10 points for not being battle ready out of each game, and that's 10 victory points that you just don't need to lose it. It's not hard to get a battle ready army these days. So yeah. Then the last page, we've got some stuff about their sponsors. Guff Ballarat, blah blah blah. Miniature Scenery. They're a sponsor, well, not a sponsor of mine, they're an ally of mine, I guess you'd call them. Big fan of their work, and they've helped me out a lot with the terrain that we use for our tournaments. They've got some shout outs down the bottom. And that more or less sums up the player pack. So it's going to be a pretty big event. I believe there's 80 players at this one, and there was 50 at the last Ratcon, so it's a steadily growing tournament series. It's becoming somewhat of a staple, and it's becoming almost like a holiday for a lot of the Melbourne people, because Ballarat, it's not too far away that it's inconvenient, but it is far enough away from Melbourne that you feel like you're going away with the boys. So a lot of people view Ratcon as a getaway with the boys, play some games, then go out for beers afterwards on the Saturday night, talk shit, have a laugh about the games that you played, and yeah. So that's the player pack for Ratcon, which basically outlines all of that. Now next I'm going to go through the mission pack, because Ratcon is not using your standard championship missions. They have their own custom missions, which I'll go through in the next video. That's going to be a really interesting one. I actually haven't read any of them yet, so there will be a live reaction video, I guess, which should be interesting. So I'll leave it here, and I'll catch you guys on the next one, which I should be posting up within a couple of days. Thanks for tuning in.
One for the blood,